Do you know what question I get asked every single day? Hey Pete, can you recommend me a book in behavioral science? Yes, I can. In fact, I'll do you one better. I'll recommend you 6. So in this video, we're going to cover my 6 favorite books from the world of psychology and behavioral science. If you want to skip to any particular review, they're all timestamped in the description. Now, I know a lot of you watching this video will be people who are new to behavioral science and maybe you're looking for a first book to read in the field. All of these books are suitable for beginners except for one, but I'll tell you which one when I get there. Okay? Let's get started. Okay, so the first book is Good Habits, Bad Habits. This is perhaps the one book that has had the biggest impact on my life. Good Habits, Bad Habits is written by Professor Wendy Wood, who is literally the world's leading authority on the science of habits. She spent an entire career studying the science of how to build good habits, how to break bad habits, and how habits just interact with so many different aspects of our lives. This book is really great for literally everyone because we all want to build good habits, we all want to break our bad habits, and this is the book that everyone should be reading to learn how to do that because Wendy Wood is of course the world's leading expert on this exact topic. I read this book over a year ago, and actually the second ever video I made on this channel was about one of the chapters in this book called What About Self-Control, and the video was called The Truth About Self-Control. And what I learned from the book and what I talk about in that video is how people over-rely on self-control instead of building good habits in order to achieve their long-term goals, which is still one of the main themes of the topics that I talk about in my videos today. So if you haven't yet read Good Habits, Bad Habits, highly recommend it. Let's move on to number 2. So the second book is Influence by Robert Cialdini. This is an absolute classic in the world of behavioral science, and I think of all of the classic books in behavioral science, this is my favorite by far. If you don't know about this amazing book, Robert Cialdini is a social psychologist who specializes in the science of persuasion. What Influence outlines for you are 7 principles of persuasion that you can use to get other people to say yes to your requests. Yes to buying your product, yes to signing up to your newsletter, yes to maybe hitting the subscribe button. No matter what domain of life you're in, you're going to have to try and persuade someone at some point, and definitely reading Influence can help you achieve that. And it's helpful the other way too, because other people are going to try and use these tricks on you as well to try and get you to say yes to their requests. So if you read Influence, then you'll be better armed and better equipped to defend yourself against these psychological tactics. Robert Cialdini actually just released a new version of this book too with a bit of extra material, so if you want to go check that out, I'll leave a link to it in the description. Okay, number 3. Okay, so the third one is How to Not Die Alone by Logan Ury. This is the most recently published book out of this list. Logan Ury is the director of relationship science at Hinge, and this book is an absolute joy to read while also being extremely useful for helping you find the love of your life. Logan Ury takes the principles of behavioral science and uses them in this context of trying to find a long-term life partner. She tells you everything from what to look for in a life partner, to how to do a first date, to how to break up with someone if it's not working well, and how to build long-term meaningful relationships with someone. It's really such a useful book for everyone, no matter the status of your love life. And I think what makes this book so enjoyable is that Logan Ury, the author, is just so blunt about all of these topics that normally would be quite taboo and touchy on in real life. Why, for example, you should block your ex off all of your social media accounts after you break up with them, stuff like that. This book is an absolute joy to read, highly recommend it. And that brings us to number 4. So number 4 is the one which I think is not suitable for beginners, and that is Behave by Robert Sapolsky. So if you're somebody who's really interested in evolutionary psychology, in neuroscience, or if you're interested in gene behavior interactions, then this is a really fantastic book. It goes into an enormous amount of depth about the many different variables that affect our behavior, and more importantly, it will expand your mind to analyze behavioral problems through many different lenses in order to have a more complex view of why people do what they do. Now, like I said, this book is not for beginners. Even me, who has a master's degree in behavioral science and an undergraduate degree in psychology, really struggle to read this book. It's very, very heavy on the technical language and on the neuroscience, and I think if you're completely unfamiliar with these ideas, it'll be a struggle for you. That being said though, if you do have a bit of a background in psychology, neuroscience, or behavioral science, then this is a really fantastic book for you, and it's kind of like taking the red pill in the Matrix. It just completely changes the way that you analyze the world. Okay, and that brings us on to number 5. Okay, so number 5 is Alchemy by Rory Sutherland, aka my boss. Rory Sutherland, obviously an absolute juggernaut in the world of marketing and business, and basically the main person leading the charge in terms of trying to get businesses and organizations to adopt behavioral science into their companies. In Rory's book, Alchemy, he's talking about the power of ideas that don't make sense. And after reading this book, the way you see products around you in the commercial world will just completely change. You'll understand things like, why does toothpaste have to have stripes? You'll understand why Red Bull is such a popular drink despite it tasting pretty bad. And there are just so many great quotes from the book too. One of my personal favorites is, "A weed is just a flower without a marketing budget." Gold like that you can only get from the mind of Rory Sutherland. So if you're interested about how businesses create psychological value in their products, I highly recommend you read Rory's Alchemy. And that brings us to the sixth and final book, which is Stop Listening to the Customer, Try Hearing Your Brand by a guy called Adam Ferrier. If you don't know who Adam Ferrier is, he's an advertising expert from Australia, and he's also got a very strong background in psychology and behavioral science. In Adam Ferrier's very entertaining book, he argues that based on research in psychology, it's pretty obvious that the customer probably doesn't actually know what they want from you. And he argues that if you listen to the customer to guide all of your business decisions, then your business will end up looking like every other business in the same market as you, and you will lose all of your brand identity.
One thing that stops them from doing that, and that person is the customer. And the customer is not the answer, and the customer gets listened to way too often in business today, and it's doing my head in.
Now, this is all very interesting from an intellectual level, but chances are most of you watching this video don't own a business. But what I found is that this book was actually very useful for me, even as somebody who doesn't own a business, because really in the modern economy, each of us is a brand. We're basically all competing against each other, and when it comes to getting a job, hiring managers are basically looking at a bunch of homogeneous candidates, and if you can find a way to make yourself stand out by having a strong brand identity, you're going to dramatically increase your chances of getting the job you want. So I think for everybody who wants to make something of themselves, stop listening to the customer, try hearing your brand is enormously valuable if you just flip the script rather than thinking about it as applying to just companies, thinking about how you yourself are a brand. Okay, so those are all of my book recommendations. Thank you guys so much for watching. The astute among you may have noticed that I changed the name of the channel. We are no longer called Pete's Bits. Instead, it's just called Pete Judo. Basically, the reason for that is that people kept complaining that it sounds too dirty, but actually, Bits was based off the BIT, the Behavioral Insights team that work in London, and also, the Warwick BIT that I used to be a part of, hence the name Pete's Bits. But a lot of people didn't seem to get that. So I'm just changing it to Pete Judo. It's much cleaner, and also it's more consistent with my social media too, which you can now follow. At Pete Judo on Twitter, at Pete Judo on Instagram, or if you want to follow my behavioral science Instagram, that's called at Pete Spitz Official still. We'll leave it like that for now. Okay, I hope nobody's too upset at the name change. It's the same content, just under a different name. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Okay, so somebody this week sent me a message saying that I should start a book club where we pick a book every month, and then at the end of the month we can do a live Q&A type of thing where you guys can ask me questions about the book. What do you guys think? I think it's quite a nice idea, but would you guys be interested in something like that? Let me know in the comments.